Hey guys, this is gonna be how to play the newest character in Reverse1999, Brume.
Whatever happens, promise me you won't laugh. You had to say dragons, didn't you, Ceci? I demand a redo.
There's really only one thing that you have to know when it comes to how to play Brume. That is that you have to stack up upon a buff as much as possible called thermoelectric conversion. This is for you to be able to gain Moxie and to accumulate dynamos. The Moxie part is the most important part because you want to be able to recast your ultimate every single turn. Now, how do we accumulate these thermoelectric conversion stacks is very simple. For every 20 stacks of dynamo funneled into the electric pulsing field by your team, you gain 5 stacks of this buff. And by simply using your incantations, there will be multiple things like, for example, inflicting burn, that all will accumulate yourself the buff that you actually need. Now let's take a look at her incantations. Her incantation number 1 is a buff. What this does is all just passive stuff that you don't really have to worry about actively. What it boils down to is that you want to keep this buff active at all times. You will have to recast this every 2 rounds, and every time you do, it grants you stacks of the buff that you are looking for. That's the important part. So you use this buff as much as possible, right? You do never hesitate to use this. You spam your incantations with Brume as much as possible. She's gonna be your main DPS, your main source of damage, and therefore self-explanatory. You spam the incantations as much as possible. Then her incantation number 2, you have to be aware of the fact that you can choose 2 different incantations here. One is an attack incantation and the other one is a channel incantation. You always, pretty much 100% of the time, want to use the channel incantation. Why? Because it grants you a stack of the buff that you are looking for. That is the most important part, so you want to recast this every single turn if possible. The attack incantation is only here once you would be at 120 stacks, or above. If that would be the case, pay attention to it. Then you could throw in an attack incantation to your will, to your liking. You don't have to do this, but again, if at 120 stacks of thermoelectric conversion or above, you can sprinkle in an attack incantation just to deal this additional damage. You don't have to worry about the buff Crystalline Discharge, because this will be active by default for 3 rounds at the beginning of the battle, and you will increase this duration by constantly recasting your ultimate, which increases the duration of this buff by 1 round. And that's all you have to know when it comes to how to play Brume. Now, there will be scenarios in which you have AP to spare, of course, and no matter if you play her with Corvus or Anionala, you're always going to use the spare AP up with these kind of characters. Both Corvus and Anionala use the same exact playstyle and incantations here. You're always gonna put an emphasis on the channel incantation, no matter if you play Corvus or Anionala, and their debuff incantation needs to be looked at as like a little bonus, that if you have spare AP left, you can sprinkle one of those in from time to time. So with all of that being out of the way, we can now hop into battle and see how things look in action. We of course gonna use the unfinished tune to be able to get our hands onto both of our incantations, in fact, to generate stacks and stacks and stacks all the time. Now on turn 1, you wanna of course set yourself up. The way you do this is you buff with Sharon, you buff with Brume, you're gonna start channeling with Brume, and now you wanna start channeling with either Anionala and Corvus as well. That is always gonna be your turn 1, no matter what. And you can see by using our incantations right now, we accumulate stacks of a buff. We have, let's see how many stacks we have. We always want to be able to get to 60 stacks of this buff as fast as possible. Right now we have 24 stacks of this buff accumulated. We want to be at 60 stacks at the end of every single round from now on, because that will lead to our follow-up attack doing an additional extra attack. I will show you how this looks right now. So on your turn 2, you wanna look, do you have the buff incantation available with Brume? And do you have the channel incantation with Brume available as well? If the answer is yes, you don't need to necessarily use your unfinished tune. If that wouldn't be the case, you use your unfinished tune right here. On turn 2, you wanna cast Sharon's ultimate. You wanna again use both the incantations with Brume and then cast her ultimate. As you just saw, you need to cast your ultimate before you actually start your channeling, because otherwise you will not be able to cast your ultimate. But that's just a little side note there. And now, by doing all of this, you will see, by casting our ultimate specifically, we will be at 60 stacks of the buff that we are trying to accumulate. And what this leads to is now the following. You will watch this here. She will perform a bunch of follow-up attacks at the end of the turn, plus an additional one if at 60 stacks. See, those are her follow-up attacks. And this one is the extra attack that she does if at 60 stacks of the buff that we accumulate. So that's why you always want to accumulate as many stacks with her as you possibly can. The way you do this is simply use her incantations. There's nothing else to it. And you can see we are now already at 47 stacks. So from now on, we will always be at 60 stacks, right? From turn 2 even on onwards, we always gonna be at the 60 stacks. Just keep reusing her incantations all the time, with an emphasis on the channel incantation. And you can see, by accumulating these stacks of the buff thermoelectric conversion, we gain Moxie out of the wazoo. This leads to us being able to recast our ultimate all the time. Every single turn we have her ultimate available to ourselves, right? So there we go. Now look, we have 2 incantations available here with Brume. That is pretty much all we are asking for. We always want at least 2 incantations every single turn available with Brume. If that's the case, we don't need to use our unfinished tune. If it wouldn't be the case, if you would only have 1 incantation with her, you use your unfinished tune. That is very, very important to keep the flow of the buff income high, right? And at the needed amount, at the recommended amount. And that's about it. Then you're gonna go ahead, right? If you play Anionala, make sure that you use Anionala's ultimate every time at the end of the very turn, right? That is very, very, very important as well. We have 2 incantations available with Brume. Those are now 2 of the incantations that will let me choose between an attack or a channel incantation. And let me show you why this is very, very important, right? Because look, if you start channeling right now, you cannot use anything else. You cannot use your ultimate, and you cannot use the other incantation that would also give you the channel. So if that is the very specific case, you're gonna use the attack incantation with Brume first, and then you're gonna use your ultimate, then you're gonna start the channeling. Now you are done with Brume anyways, so you are not locked out of anything anymore. And by the way, if that wouldn't be the case, whenever a turn occurs where you do not have at least 2 incantations available with Brume, you're gonna use your unfinished tune to accumulate them. Remember, every single turn, 2 incantations with Brume, every single turn you're gonna use her ultimate. Okay, and then as I said, you can wing it a little bit, and you want to put an emphasis on the channel incantation with either Anionala or Corvus in that case, and then you're going to use your ultimates, right? Very simple and very straightforward. Now, the more and more and more stacks of the buff that we are looking for, we accumulate, the more and more and more we come online, of course, right? But the most important thing is always that we have 60 stacks of this buff accumulated at the end of the turn, and if you just do the process that I just explained to you correctly, you will always, every single turn, have those 60 stacks. And then boop, right? Of course, there is a lot of passive stuff happening here, like, for example, Corvus reduces the mental resistance of our opponent. Brume decreases the critical resist rate of our opponent, and so on and so forth. We apply burn and all that stuff. We apply vulnerability, but all of this stuff is happening anyways. You do not have to pay any attention to this. And now look at our hand. What do we see here? What is the kicker? We do only have one incantation available with Brume. What did we just figure out? We always, every single turn, want at least 2 of those. So this is the time where we use our unfinished tune. And easy as that, right? Then we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna buff, we're gonna use our ultimate, and we're gonna channel. Then we can wing it. What did we figure out? We put an emphasis on the channeling incantation with either Corvus or Anionala. We don't have that right now. So if we then have spare AP to use, we either gonna use whatever our sustain is to heal ourselves, to provide shields, right? Or if we don't even need that, then we're gonna use the debuff incantation with either Corvus or Anionala. And that is truly everything that you have to know when it comes to how to play the newest character Brume in Reverse 1999. Now, her most efficient team in the game is of course playing her together with Anionala, Sharon and Fatuto, right? But yeah, you can use this one here as well. Yeah, I mean Ezra is a little bit useless to be fair, but still if you want more stacks faster, you can accumulate dynamos with Ezra. Those get funneled, those provide stacks to Brume, and that is also very, very beneficial, but you don't want to use Ezra. You can see that she wasn't part of our rotations at all here. So the best possible support that you can use if you play her together with Corvus and not Anionala would be Via. If you play her together with Anionala, that is only possible if you use Fatuto as your sustain. That is very, very important. But that was about it. Now let's take a look at Psycubes and Resonance. Her signature Psycube will be available for you right here. You go to Bank, you go to Fragment Shop, you're gonna buy these 2 Gluttonies here, and here it is. This is her signature Psycube called her Willful Leap. That is what you're gonna use on her most likely, but you have to know that this is only the second best choice and not the best in slot. But let's first see what this Psycube actually does. It gives you critical hit rate, and after casting a channel incantation, you grant yourself a damage bonus. You grant this damage bonus to all allies for 1 round in fact. And when you attack, if you attack with an extra action, which you will do all the time, right? Every single turn, multiple extra actions are happening. Then you gain ultimate might plus 4% for 1 round. That is enough because we're gonna cast our ultimate anyways every single turn. So that is gonna be very, very beneficial. But as I said, this is not gonna be the best in slot Psycube. The best in slot Psycube for Brume is the signature Psycube for Flutter Page called On the Hand of Time. You benefit more, you gain a bigger damage increase by stacking the critical damage up and getting some penetration rate up upon yourself. So that is gonna be technically the best in slot for Brume. Her resonance is gonna be the one that you see on your screen right here, but with an elucidation piece, not the genuity piece. The elucidation piece is the best. We're gonna focus on critical damage, damage bonus, and we have to sprinkle in some attack to fill this thing up. So there we go. We of course have to talk about her portraits. I put this on the end of the video on purpose, because for everyone who's watching to the end, you guys are not gonna miss out on key information. Brume relies on her portrait number 1. Without her portrait number 1, this character is unplayable. The reason, right, why this portrait is absolutely necessary is because it increases the stacks of the buff that we are looking for to 15. If we don't have this portrait, we only get 10 stacks per incantation of our buff that we are looking for. That is detrimental. Why? Because we need 15 stacks of this buff in order to gain a Moxie. You see this right here. For every 15 stacks of the buff that we gain, Brume accumulates Dynamo and a Moxie. The Moxie is the very, very key part here. Without this, you will not be able to consistently use your ultimate every single turn. That makes Brume become much worse of a character. With portrait number 1, for every single incantation that you cast, you gain an additional Moxie. That is key when you want to play Brume. And you can just look, right? I will not read this off. Look at this wall of text. There's so many damage increases here as well. On top of this, if you gain a Moxie every time. It's absolutely absurdly crazy. This is what you need to make Brume a playable character. So please keep that in mind. Do not go for P0 Brume if you pull for this trash. At least get her P1 so she becomes playable. Okay, that is super important. Now, if you are in this disbelief and you fall for this complete misinformation that is spread all across the community, then you are most likely want to get Brume to P5, right? Don't do that. If you want to go like extremely deep, get her portrait number 4. That is the true juicer when it comes to the amount of damage that she will deal. The portrait number 5 here is meh. Portrait number 4 is the true damage increase and where she turns into at least a little bit into a berserker, let me say it like that. But the key one that you need is P1. A lot of emphasis on this. You need P1 in order to play Brume. That's it for the video, guys. I hope this was fun and informative. If you like Reverse 1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate that. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, and we love this game.